Welcome back. So from unclaimed dividends and dormant accounts to food security. So let's talk about food security, which is a measure of the availability of food and individuals' ability to access it. For Nigeria, incessant security challenges, the COVID-19 pandemic, amid other factors, have affected food security in the country with its attendant effects such as malnutrition. You know, there was a time that they say, particularly, I think around the northern region, we have 40% of children stunted. And, you know, it stems from a lot of factors, of course, which includes
and the contradiction
nutrition.
therein is that that is where most of our food comes from. So what is the reason they're exporting so much they can't afford to feed their children the food that they produce?
Okay, so we'll find out, you know, how much of effort is being put in place to address issues surrounding food security in Nigeria. These and other questions will be answered by our guests. Let me start with our guest in the studio here is the chairman at Greek Group, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. African Farmer Mogaji. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And also from Zaria, joining us via Zoom, is the Executive Director, National Agriculture Extension and Research Liaison Services, Professor Mohammed Othman. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Yes, good morning. Good morning.
Good to have you, Prof.
Yes, I would like to say that, I just finished my tenure as Executive Director of NRLS just toward the end of last year, but I'm still working in the same place. I'm the Professor of Agricultural Extension, Agricultural Engineering. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. Let me start with you, Prof. Are we in danger of, you know, inadequate food supply in the country?
Yeah, well, I can say that yes, even without the COVID-19 pandemic, Nigeria has been facing a lot of problems of food security. Because if you look at the definition of food security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs for an active and healthy lifestyle. And that means that, you know, when you look at this definition, there are three major components. One, the food has to be qualitative. That means it has to be safe, healthy, and of nutritional value. Two, it has to be quantitative. That means that it has to be, you know, quantitative enough to meet the needs of all the people within the given period of time. And then the food also has to be available and accessible.
African Farmer, yes. Let's talk about funding.
I think Prof
for
is
the
having some
sector.
challenge with his connection there. Okay, we can continue with Mr. Mogaji here.
This country has always spoken about agriculture. We need to grow more food. We need to get more farmers. We need to encourage farming and all that. Do you think that sector is well funded, as in funded well enough to be able to provide enough food for 200 million people?
The sector is not well funded as it should be funded to take care of 200 million. And when you're talking about the funding, we should not be focusing on 200 million. We probably should be talking about 600 million. Why do I say 600 million? Because the food security, we need the reserves to be full.
Okay.
So if we budget that we are going to feed 600 million people, then we would have excess to go and store,
and then excess.
And so we would be secure. If we focus on 200, we will always not have enough because we will not pay attention to the reserves.
Before you continue, where are we now in terms of, you know, this description that you've given?
Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say maybe 4.
4?
4, yeah.
Wow. So 4, it's
below average. It's not pass, but it's below average.
Below average.
Yes.
Okay. The Prof was trying to, you know, talk about some of the what really food security is, and How can we attain it in Nigeria? Let's talk about that.
Well, we can attain food security first if we have the right people in the right offices. That's
If we have more African farmers.
well, because what we currently have now cannot take us to the promised land. And what do I mean by that? We have square pegs in round holes. And most of the government parastatals, they are the ones that are directly responsible for us being food secure. And you find out that the people at the helm of those affairs are mostly not agri experts. It's just like asking a PhD in agri to go and become the CMD in an hospital. That's chief medical director in Lut. It won't work. But that's what we find in agri all the time.
Even if it's a question of, having that administrative capacity. Because sometimes perhaps the head would not have to be, somebody that is in the know, but the person that's got the administrative capacity to be able to put together all of the other parameters.
You see, the challenge is agri is like medicine. Lives are involved in both. So yes, you need that administrative capacity. However, it's more technical. If you don't understand the technicalities, you'll be bamboozled with a lot of things, which would come out of self-interest. And so when they present you with technical things, you don't know. And that's why what we have with a lot of people in administration, especially like in the ministries, when you talk about ministers appointed in the agri sector. So, one of the few past ministers, was told that they could just go and bring some seeds, rice seeds from Thailand. And the man bought the idea and came on media to say, we're going to bring these seeds, not knowing that those seeds are adapted to that environment. So when you bring it here, it's a different scenario. It may take 3-4 years of spending government money on a wrong project that will give wrong results. So agri is technical. So you need people who have the administrative ability as well as the technical components of it.
Okay, and for our farmers, if we leave the administrators, let's talk about our farmers. How well, there's a couple of initiatives by the government to help the farmers grow better, and how is that going?
Well, I always give it to this administration. The truth must be told. In terms of filtering resources, maybe funding down, this administration has really tried a lot. There are some bottlenecks here and there. The money is getting to the people at the right time, which is the biggest challenge. But they've done better. However, also, I always say monitoring and evaluation. We don't fund monitoring and evaluation like we fund these projects. And two, we need to also move a bit, we're not getting the right results projected even by the government. And what needs to happen is we need to fund in new sets of farmers who are not the local farmers. The local farmers are the elderly people, the 50s, 60s. We need to go after the younger ones in the rural community, not the urban youths. There's a lot of focus now on urban youths trying to make it look appealing, but it's the rural youth that has gone through the ropes, learning from their grandfathers, their fathers. So just scaling them.
Where would you place yourself?
I'm in between because one, I learned from the old gurus. My dad, I'm privileged. My dad was the second group managing director of Odua, and I was exposed to many of the projects in the Southwest and also in Ondo State Investment, where you have all the oil palms. So I grew up, and my dad had a massive farm, rice farm. It was growing at like 750 acres as at 85. So I grew up with the standard.
Okay.
And I'm in between.
Professor, when Dr. Adesina was the Minister of Agri, we heard of a lot of things, a lot of impressive things. Are these things being continued? And to your mind, are we getting the kind of results we're expecting to get?
Well, I would like to say we are not really getting the result that we really wanted to get, because there are many things that are actually playing against what we are doing. And like I already started talking about what is food security, and I've also mentioned that. But the major, issue here is that Nigerian population is growing rapidly. You may recall that during the independence, Nigerian population was just about 43 million, and today we have more than 200 million people, and everybody needs food. And in fact, on the average, per hour, every hour in Nigeria, there's about 850 babies. And the death is about 280, and we have a gap of increase of population of about 570. So, and when you look at this one per year, we have about 4.92 million. So this is quite a large population of people. And food, everybody needs food. You cannot give any excuse for not providing food to anybody, people. So, and most of the policies, like he has mentioned, like Doctor has mentioned, really we need to look at ourselves, because I always said Nigeria has a potential to feed Africa, not only Nigeria, because this country is blessed with large, arable land of about 91 million hectares of land, and the range of rainfall from 700 millimeters to over 4,000 millimeters. And that means that this country can produce more than 100 different agricultural commodities, but yet we keep on importing food, and still people go to sleep with hunger in their stomach. So why is this so? There are many reasons. And one of the reasons, of course, is the issue of policy. We need to have policy, and we need to have policy being implemented. Second, of course, the implementers of the policy. Three, the investment. In Nigeria, you find that only federal government maybe sometimes provide a budget of about 2 to 3% of their budget into agriculture. The state and local government are almost doing nothing. People just talk about agriculture, but when it comes to reality in terms of investment, you find that nobody is investing, and that is why there's low level of agri-mechanization. And when there's low level of agri-mechanization, many youths cannot go to the farm, because nobody wants to go to the farm and then be bending to be using cutlass and hoe. People need to be able to use appropriate technology, mechanized technology, that they will be able to increase their productivity. And that is why also it has also been attractive, because even to the private sector, because of the low productivity. You see, the low productivity in Nigeria is quite very glaring when you compare to what is happening elsewhere. You see, in some places you can find that a hectare of land can give you about 8 to 10 tons of maize, but here the average yield is about 1.5 to even 2 tons per hectare, which is quite the marginal profit is very, very low. And then you also have unstable market. So most of the farmers, when they look at, if they are to do the cost analysis of what they invest and what they do, many people will not go to the farm. But many are being forced to go to the farm, one, for food security of their own family, and two, to be able also to sell little. But generally, in this country, we have not been actually paying the desired attention that is required, so that we'll be able to even feed the nation. And like I mentioned, there's no particular state out of that 6 states that cannot feed itself and even export. And
Professor, I beg your pardon, before you depart too far from what I'm about to raise. What is responsible for this low yield?
Very good. The most fundamental, most important is the poor extension services. Poor extension services. In Nigeria, many people are using their traditional way of producing food. That's one. And if you don't use knowledge, because today agriculture is driven by knowledge. It is this knowledge that will make you to increase 3 or 4-fold of whatever production that you have been doing in the past. From the same area, you can find that, like I mentioned, 1 hectare can produce about 8 tons per hectare of maize. and Nigeria hardly you can get 2 to 2.5 tons per hectare. So one is the issue of farm extension services. As you may recall, many young men now don't even know the existence of extension personnel. And the ratio of extension personnel to number of farmers in Nigeria is between 8,000 to 10,000. One extension is to serve about 10,000, which is practically impossible. And then coupled with the fact that extension requires movement. You cannot do extension in the office. You must go out. And that if you don't go out, there's no way you can actually contact the farmer, do it, because the extension is not only giving information, but also practically participating for farmers to see, establish a demonstration plot so that farmers are seeing and are doing it. And that's how they will learn. So we have that problems of extension services. And like I also mentioned earlier, the investment. You find that if you look at all the budgets in the last 10 years, there has never been a budget of government, either federal or state, that has reached 5%. And not only the budgetary allocation, that's another issue, but even the release, because our financial officers feel that they can release money at any time. But agriculture is not like that. Agriculture is time bound. If you are to apply fertilizer this week and you refuse to apply till next week, there's going to be the result is going to be different. So, and in Nigeria, you see, you find that release of funds is at the people just do it at when they want to do it, not when it is desired to be done. So you find that most of this budget that is being allocated, hardly most of the research institute and agencies and so on can receive even 70% of what had been budgeted for them at the time they need it. So that is very critical, because without investment, there's no way you can acquire the necessary tools and infrastructure to be able to increase their productivity.
African farmer, do pardon me. I want to stay with Professor. Professor, you spoke about the modern farming appliances or implements or whatever they're called. Now, you are a professor in this sector. What are you doing, or what is your institute doing about introducing our farmers to these new ways of doing things?
Thank you very much for this question. I would like to say that in Nigeria, we have a lot of technologies that have been developed, by the Research Institute as well as the faculties of agriculture. And most of these technologies are on shelf. I want you to understand that anybody who is going to read agriculture at master's or PhD level must participate in a research project to address one problem or the other. Now, the question is that we have about 70 faculties of agriculture, and you have thousands of PhD students and MSc students all participating in agriculture, in addition to 17 agricultural research institutes.
Professor,
that are all
I beg to interrupt you yet again. I do beg your pardon. We need to take a short break.
What are we doing? What?
When we come back, you will continue from where you left off. I do beg your pardon. Yes, Professor, we were talking about what your institute was doing about introducing these new technologies to farmers.
Okay. You see, NRLS, of course, is in charge of agricultural extension services, and then making liaison with the research institute in the country. In the last 5 or 6 years, NRLS has been doing the best it can to really reach out, but as you may see, NLS is just one institute, and it has, less than 2,000 staff. So, it has to work with other national agricultural research institutes. And those national agricultural research institutes, the question is, are we really, working together and things like that? Yeah. So there are a lot of, challenges. One of the major challenges, like I mentioned, is the issue of funding. Are we really funding this research institute as is supposed to be done, so that they can bring out, the technology that can be packaged and be disseminated to other people? But be as it is, in the last 3 or 4 years, there has been a lot of achievement that, like I mentioned, I completed my tenure by October last year, and there's already somebody who is now in the ED. But all the same, we are all, as a team, been working. There was an establishment of National Farmers Helpline, which has actually, become a platform that reaching out to the farmers as well as any other stakeholders. So, and then also reaching out to the National Research Institute that are doing. But like I mentioned, the nation, the population is quite very large, and being very large, it is quite also very difficult really to reach out to everybody. The state government must work or must wake up and do what is supposed to be done. Because as an institute, we are supposed to be working with
network is in the way. Let's go back to the studio, Mr. Mogaji. The Prof raised a couple of issues. One, he talked about some of the challenges, against agriculture in the country, policy and its implementation. He talked about the implementers. He also talked about investment. Now, you have said, okay, in terms of implementation, perhaps people that are at the helm of affairs, and they're not who or what they should be, although that is left to a couple of other discussions. But in terms of investment, where exactly should we be investing in? Who should be doing the investment?
Well, first, we should be investing in mechanization, especially small. So when we talk about mechanization in the country, we're looking for large manufacturing concerns. And we should be looking at countries that we have similar challenges, similar opportunities, similar climates. India, Malaysia, they develop the agricultural sector on small and medium, not large. We focus on giant projects that we depend on foreign maintenance and foreign sustenance. So we should be looking at all the tractors they bring in are not the tractors we need. We need tractors, we need small tractors, something that can work for 2.5 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres, because by the size of our land holdings, they are small. So we bring equipment that is not meant for the system here. And when we go out, we see what they practice. China, India feeds in rice using small handheld equipments. So that is what needs to be brought in here. And so we need small mechanization. However, we also need to put in money into the processing, cottage and modular processors, where okay, we don't have the funding. The government doesn't have the funding to make sure that all the roads are fixed. So what do we need to do? We need to get modular processors that can operate in the rural community so that at harvest, they can quickly add value in record time, and that can prolong the shelf life. But we're not putting the investment in small mechanization and small processing. If we put in money there as against giving seed fertilizer to farmers, we will do better. And when the Prof spoke about productivity, I have always said we should not be focusing on production. We should be focusing on productivity. What that means is, so instead of us getting, like he said, we have about 1.5 to 2 or 2.5 tons per hectare as against 8 to 10 to 12 in some places. The same 1 hectare is 1 hectare in Mexico. It's the same 1 hectare in Brazil, but Brazil will get 10 tons. We need the quality seeds. We need to be able to test the soil. These are the things they do out there. The rural farmers, the people we call rural farmers out there, have access to these things. So the quality of the seeds, the quality of the soil. So if you bring seeds from America and put it in a deficient soil, it's not going to give you the results. So those systems is what we need, but that's not where we are putting money.
And training for farmers too.
It's a capacity development. And I say this, many of the people, yes, we're all promoting now food security. Post-lockdown, it became very apparent and clear to us that food is priority to all of us.
Indeed.
Now, so the thing is that if we focus on food, let all the banks, the oil companies, let all of them go and set up farms. The question is, do we have the staffs that can manage these things to the capacity in which the investors want to? The answer is no. So we need to retrain and retrain. As much as we are funding seeds, we also need to fund capacity development and teach about process.
What about storage? Because right now, I think it's the seasons for tomatoes. And if you go to, if you're in Lagos, you go to the popular Mount 12 market, a basket of tomato, 3,500, 4,000 naira,
Yes.
big and fresh. You know, every time I see them, it's like I should continue to acquire. But what are we doing about storage? This is the season. Before you know it, this same tomato that is selling for 4,000 naira per basket will be up to 12, 15, 16,000.
And please add to that, this issue of tomatoes. We heard at one time that Dangote had a huge tomato farm.
Yes.
And he was going to be making tomato paste. Has that become a reality yet? And I recall growing up, there was a company, the headquarters was in Lagos. They had farms all over the north, tomato farms, and they were making tomato puree called veg fruit.
Okay.
I remember they were
Yes.
even supplying hotels, and they had cans this large.
They're in Bono.
Yes. And what happened to that?
So,
It's all tomatoes we're talking now.
tomatoes. So fortunately, I've operated in that value chain for about 12 years. And I've leveraged that gap. So, but you see, it's more about planning than storage. So if this year now, tomato is still, the price is, when it's 3.5 in Lagos, it's 300, 500, 200 per basket in some northern states. I have been there. In Gombe, it will be like 500 naira now per basket.
Wow, that big basket?
I'm giving you facts, you know, and I stand to be corrected. Even in Kano, it will be like 1,115 now.
Wow.
You see, this has been happening for over 15 years. And that's why I have a challenge. And I say that we have the wrong people heading some of these ministries and parastatals. Now, for the last 15 years, we've had tomatoes 3,000, 2,000 per basket in January, February. And it would proceed to 12, 15. And by the way, every year onions go expensive. The next year, tomato would be 35 to 40. So wait till May, June. So what I'm saying...
Hang on. By May, June, it will be 30,000 naira.
This is how it works.
So
for
we
me,
should buy and store now.
If it's happening for 15 years...
That's if you have any
and we
electricity.
have the same system not changing. And let me
Yeah.
just provide a solution to that, because I've operated in Gombe, Jigawa, Kano, where you have those river basins. We just need to reduce the number of farmers producing these tomatoes as at that time, because the farmers are not making money.
Yeah.
So we need to reduce the farmers, encourage them to probably grow more rice so that we can have the market balance out. The farmers are losing money, but that is what they know how to do.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the same
So it
thing.
goes back to
Every year.
training and capacity
Training and
building.
capacity development. Prof spoke about extension. When Agric was working, the funding for extension was almost as equal as the funding for the seed, fertilizer, and co. Because extension is what sustains the system. Now, you spoke about the Dangote processing. Fortunately, I've been there a couple of times. And now there are a lot of dynamics there. Now, the farmers, one, they don't grow the right seeds, which is where government needs to fund. If they want to fund, they should be funding the top quality seeds. So if they fund the wrong seeds, the Dangote cannot use most of those tomatoes. And I know for years they bought from them just to stabilize the market.
Yeah.
However, there's a tomato cabal. The tomato cabal is truncating the efforts of the Dangotes and co. I volunteer as stakeholder on some of these platforms. So even if Dangote buys those tomatoes to process, not even, when Dangote was buying those tomatoes to sustain the farmers, the cabal, they were not buying. They were saying, oh, the quality is low and co, and that's where it comes to NAFDAC. NAFDAC we need to have like two brands, two regulations, one for local consumption, one for export. Most of the tomatoes brought in, data is available. Nigeria agribusiness.
Hang on, brought in, you were importing tomatoes?
Oh, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've been bringing in tomatoes, at least that I know. I've been to Ghana, Benin, Burkina Faso, Senegal, where they bring tomatoes in, and it's still the most expensive. However, let me balance that conversation. We can bring in tomatoes.
When we have tomatoes in Gombe, that is
Yes,
going for a basket
we
of 200
just
naira.
need to focus the tomatoes coming from the north. Now we need to be processing more. Tomatoes should not be coming from the north and we are consuming fresh here. Southwest and the south of the country needs to be focusing on what they call fresh tomatoes, while the northern part of the country focus on processing tomatoes. And so that's where we should have our paste and co, while south produces what we eat. I say this, I'm trained on U.S. food security and foreign policy. U.S. imports tomato from Mexico. They are neighbors. But they import fresh tomatoes. But U.S. is the 5th largest producer of tomato. They produce processed tomato. And that's where you have the ketchups and co.
Yes.
So they focus, they niche. And so there's nothing bad coming in. It shows there are opportunities,
Yes.
but it's just that we're not taking advantage of this. The farmers this year are facing what they were facing 15 years ago. Every year they face this. So we need modular processing plants. Dry tomato is big deal abroad. So we need people who can plan, one. We need people who know, and we know people who have experience to man these things. And we don't have that. That's where the challenge is. It's really not the funding, it's the administration.
Okay. Now, Professor, the pandemic opened our eyes to the fact that many more people are going into farming of some sort. Fish farming, poultry farming. I mean, I was living in an estate where about 6 people had farms all in Ekpe. And every week they would go and harvest some stuff and bring to the estate and we would purchase. How much is that helping in this, our search for food security? These little farms that people are now owning.
Yeah, well, it's helping in a way that it's showing us that there are a lot of opportunities because it really challenged our resilience. The pandemic challenged our resilience in the sense that even when you are going to import, where you are going to import, there's also lockdown. So there was no production. So that means that it made us to think deeply. And I remember at the beginning, it made us to even, adopt the new technology of having meeting, through Zoom and things like that. I remember during that time, especially last year, we had meeting with all the EDPs through Zoom, and the honorable minister as well. I can recall he set up a committee, which I was privileged to be one, and we quickly look at some of the issues, especially the policy issues. It was during that period we're able to review the National Agricultural Extension Policy, which we incorporated many things and brought it out. And the minister, was very happy with that, and he promised that this thing is going to be implemented. Because, like I mentioned, the major concern is the issue of policy. Can we have a policy that we can begin to implement? And it doesn't matter whichever government comes, it goes with that policy. It is, of course, free to modify and improve. But there should be some fundamental, especially those issues that may be legislated. And once they're legislated, it will be very difficult to refill. So, and part of it is the issue of how to finance extension services. Like I started talking about when we conducted agricultural performance survey last year, we found out that up to the month of August, many ADPs were not, about 24 ADPs did not receive any allocation of funds. So without receiving any allocation of funds means that there will be no activities. And the issue is that where why is it that the ADPs, which is the frontliners of extension personnel or extension services, is not being funded appropriately? And that is the one issue that we look at, and it is already incorporated in the National Agricultural Extension Policy document, which we hope it will be legislated maybe this year. And once that is done, I'm sure the issue of funding of extension services will be over, because most of these problems we are talking about is the issue of extension services. People don't really know, even they have been farming for a long time, cannot even identify it. They don't even know where to get it. They don't know how to even, even when you talk about fertilizer, you will be surprised to find that many farmers that have been using fertilizer don't even know how to apply fertilizer. So, and that's the beginning. So I think
Prof.
the pandemic really. Hello?
Okay, thank you so much. We got a lot of that, and he went back to the issue of also, capacity building. But before we go, we need to go in like 2 minutes. If I don't talk about rice, local rice, I'm not sure this discussion is going to end. We're talking about, doing well in rice farming. Is that the case? Because this last Christmas, we still got a bag of rice, local rice, 28,000. Some people talking about 30,000.
Well, two things about rice is we've not gotten it right with producing rice that consumers want. The rice we get, which is the first stage really, the rice we get is not the rice consumers want. So it's just when they open the borders, people will go back to the old rice. Two, what is the cost of production? The quality of our seeds. We plant more grains, which is, than the seeds. So the input, we don't have quality input. The fertilizers are not the quality, is not the quality required, the input. So for rice sufficiency, we're still far, but we've made significant progress.
What's happened to lake rice?
Well, so lake rice, flood affected lake rice. Okay. Lake rice, from Kebbi to Lagos, there's a challenge. But we need to watch out for the, I call it rice to oil corridor, or the oil to rice corridor, which is the Dangote refinery to the Immortal rice. That's a corridor that is going to bring a lot of money.
Wow. We're hoping that, Nigeria would indeed attain food security. You talked about if we are 200 million people, we should be preparing for 600 million. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on this morning. We've been speaking with the chairman, Agri Group, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. African Farmer Mogaji, and of course, from the National Agricultural Extension and Research Liaison Services, joining us from Zaria via Zoom, Professor Muhammad Othman. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Sunrise Daily.